So my name is Elizabeth. As Rebecca mentioned, I teach Stanford's Compassion Cultivation training at Tibet House. I'm so honored to be taking part of Bob Thurman's course. I respect him immensely, and it's wonderful to be able to contribute to the Force for Good program. To start off, our inspiration from the Dalai Lama, that each and every one of us can become a force for good. And there, thank you, Rebecca. Rebecca's a force for good. And the theme for today is, how can we use the Dalai Lama's example for a better world, for a better earth? Sometimes it sounds so good to be a good person, to contribute positively. A lot of Daniel Goleman's book talked first about the inside attitude and then what you can do on the outside. And what I'll focus on today is really the attitude. How do you bring about that mindset, that heart that is able to do good for people? And we'll do this in 3 ways today. We'll start with mindfulness, and then go on to joy. And I think sometimes joy is underestimated in a spiritual practice, but to appreciate the joy in one's life and the joy of others, and then to compassion. So it'll be a natural progression. And along the way, I'll talk about the Stanford Center for Compassion that I teach through, and the science of compassion. So that's our roadmap for today. And we'll actually be meditating for about an hour of it, and I'll be teaching or speaking for about an hour. So it'll be about an hour of cultivation of mindfulness, joy, and compassion, the practice, and an hour kind of the theory, the ideas, quotes from the Dalai Lama. So that's what our evening will look like. Can you still hear me in the back? Okay, great. Are we streaming, Rebecca? Are we on? Okay, great. So we're all ready. Let's start with the very big picture, which is really what the Dalai Lama offers, the big picture of why cultivating compassion is important. And I want to share 3 quotes from some of the great thinkers of the past. First, Socrates. The highest realms of thought are impossible to reach without first attaining an understanding of compassion. One of the things we'll talk about later in this presentation is there something related to intelligence and mindfulness and intelligence and compassion? And the answer is yes. That Socrates' intuition was absolutely correct. It's a different kind of intelligence. It's this spacious way of thinking. We can see things from such a limited perspective. Just if it's me and kind of, this is good for me, this is bad for me, this I like, this I don't like, this benefits me, this doesn't. Sometimes it can be this very kind of limited container. And it's compassion that allows us to open it up, kind of a spacious perspective of what's good for humanity, who else is involved, how can I be good to others. So this kind of third degree point of view, kind of third eye perspective, bird's eye view on our actions, on our lives, I think is very liberating and can almost immediately lead to more happiness. My favorite author, Dostoevsky, compassion is the chief law of human existence. And Einstein, the scientist, our task must be to free ourselves from this prison of the mind by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. And we will actually do this today in our compassion meditation. So we will take on this perspective in a meditation later. Finally, the Dalai Lama. I think one of the quotes from the Dalai Lama that struck me immediately while I was studying at Stanford is from his book, Ethics for a New Millennium. By nature, the satisfaction material gain can provide us with will be limited to the level of the senses. Our needs transcend the merely sensual. That by nature, satisfaction of material gain is limited to the level of the senses. When we crave happiness, meaning, it's not on the level of the senses. The most important things we receive in life may not be just on the level of the senses. And that's what joy, mindfulness, compassion can give us, that which maybe the senses aren't able to. So how many of you have read the Force for Good book, at least like a fourth of it? A fourth of it. Okay, how many of you have read the whole thing? No judgment, just to see. How many of you have a daily or at least weekly mindfulness practice? Okay, and how about have tried it once or twice and that's about it? Mindfulness, okay. And who has tried a compassion meditation at any point in the past? Great. And how about does it at least every week? Okay, great. So I just wanted to get a sense of the crowd. We will be doing all those things tonight. So one of the things that Daniel Goleman describes so well in Force for Good is this very noble mission of the Dalai Lama to spread not necessarily Buddhism, but the core values of Tibetan Buddhism. This value of living with clarity, seeing things as they are, and looking at the world with eyes of compassion. And in his perspective, it doesn't have to be linked to a religion. Compassion can be secular. And this is why he approached scientists and wanted to know, well, what effect does compassion have on the body? Can we teach it in a secular way because it affects the body and mind in a certain way? And he's collaborated with multiple institutions. My training of this material was through Stanford, so that's the story I'll tell you, that the Dalai Lama approached Stanford Medical School and wanted to know the effects that compassion has on the body and the brain, met with scientists, was very modest about it, learned as much as he could, and helped found CCARE, or the Stanford Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education. He put James Doty as the director, this neurosurgeon on the right. A science of compassion can help humanity, the Dalai Lama argues, by putting human values on firmer footing. Sometimes if you tell people, oh, be compassionate and guilt trip into them, people won't want to do that. But if you tell people your blood pressure is going to get so much better, and you'll sleep well at night, and your relationships will improve, and your stress will decline, suddenly people want to be compassionate and want to learn how to be compassionate, something that Dalai Lama calls kind of selfish selflessness or selfish compassion. And it's not selfish, but to him it doesn't matter what reason we take to be compassionate. So this Center CCARE, with the Dalai Lama's mentorship and donations, was formed at Stanford Medical School. And it's a group of neuroscientists, behavioral scientists, geneticists, researchers who come together to examine the effects compassion has on the body and the mind, on health and happiness. And the benefits are endless, from kind of funny ones to compassionate people can detect lies better, to really big benefits in health and happiness that I'll go over in the second half of this presentation. The vision is a world in which, thanks to rigorous research studies on the benefits of compassion, the practice of compassion is understood to be as important for health as physical exercise and a healthy diet. And at this point, the research has caught up kind of to this mission that there are so many benefits that it is as important to be compassionate to other people as it is to eat well and exercise and floss. So at this Center for Compassion, a program was developed on how to cultivate compassion step by step. So it was tested on MRI scans, tested through talking to loved ones of the people in it, by looking at the health progress, the happiness progress of the people in the program. And it turned out that compassion really can be trained. And this wonderful 8-week program was developed at the center by the scientists. And I've been teaching it at Tibet House for 2.5 years now. Almost every term, I've taught it 9 times at Tibet House. It's always been an enormous pleasure. And what I love about this program is that it's so practical. It's accessible, and it really takes students step by step. Those who've never meditated, have never heard about it, are skeptical, always backing it up by science, and starts with compassion for a loved one, and then yourself, and then strangers, and then difficult people, and this idea of common humanity and what we share. I studied at Stanford Medical School for 2 years, the neuroscience and philosophy of compassion, and that's about as long as it took me to get certified to teach this program. I taught it at Stanford, and then it was a great pleasure to teach it in New York City. I'll be starting again on Sunday, a new round of students. I think it's actually all filled up at Tibet House, but I have a wonderful past student here at Tibet House who offers her space called Daisyville, which is just 2 doors down. So we'll have 2 sections, one 4 to 6 at Tibet House, and one 7 to 9 at Daisyville. Gandon calls it the little Tibet House pop-up around the corner. So there's like a little Tibet House pop-up, just so that classes here don't get too big for this compassion program. So if you're intrigued on training compassion specifically, Tibet House has those resources. What I love about CCARE's approach, which is very much driven by the Dalai Lama, is that it's very practical and very direct. It's not about the kind of the mysticism and kind of this is too hard for you to do. It's not moral, it's not religious. It's just how can you act in a way to maximize your happiness and your health? So we're here on Earth for a limited amount of years. How can we make the most of this time? And the answer is connecting to the present moment, connecting to other people's joy with joy, and relating to suffering with compassion. So basically, connecting to everything, connecting to every experience. If the experience is one of happiness, connecting to it with joy. If the experience is one of suffering, connecting to it with compassion. Sounds very straightforward. It is kind of a journey to really get there, to get that connection to be automatic. And one way to train that is through meditation. The assumptions of CCARE is that compassion is an instinctive quality we all share. If you were to see a small child crying, you'd want to turn your head and comfort that child. It's deep within us. But at the same time, most of us have some limits. And I believe that we've been conditioned, really, to have those limits in a way. To be in a consumer culture, we have to constantly be wanting something, kind of wanting to be better, wanting to stand out in comparison with someone else. And I think the media really pushes that on us. I think we're more compassionate than it might even seem as soon as we kind of peel away that layer. And the good news is that compassion can be trained. From Daniel Goleman's book, to change the future from a very sorry reread of the past, the Dalai Lama tells us, we need to transform our minds. Without that inner shift, we stay vulnerable to knee-jerk reactions like rage, frustration, and hopelessness. The most important thing we can train is our attitude, the way our minds work. I think the most important thing I can recommend that you do is a compassion contemplation in your mind. And this might seem counterintuitive because isn't doing more important than thinking. Any way of thinking can lead to many, many actions. So a way of thinking, a way of behaving leads to thousands of actions. Whereas one action, if I were just to tell you, do one kind thing today, you'd probably do that one kind thing. You might do it 1 or 2 times. But if you change the way you think, your natural reactions change. That's why there's such an emphasis on a practice, on a spiritual practice. We have extremely difficult brains formed over years and years of evolution. And our brains have been conditioned for anxiety and anger and confusion. One way to describe our brain is a suffering machine. So our minds are made to look for threats, something Dan Goleman mentions, that our minds are made to look for threats. Human beings survived partly because we were so good at imagining and seeing and observing threats wherever they may be. And maybe we see threats where there aren't any threats, but that doesn't harm our survival, right? Even if we see too many threats around, that doesn't harm our survival, especially when we were early humans. So we have these minds that are kind of tailored to looking for the negative. So it takes an extra jump, extra effort to look for the positive, or to feel happy, to feel connected. One quality of mind that supports compassion is mindfulness. It's this calm, grounded, and centered stability of attention. That can be the social revolution inside our minds before there's a social revolution outside in the world. So mindfulness meditation is something I want to give you a chance to practice today and tonight. One of the 3 or 4 meditations we'll do, none of them too long. It's maybe just a 6 or 7 minute mindfulness meditation to put you in that compassionate state of mind. We'll do this mindfulness meditation, and then we'll talk about how this relates to compassion. Because really, mindfulness and compassion are indivisible. They kind of work in the same direction towards the same thing. So if you are ready, take a comfortable seat, whether you're here in this room or in your own home watching. Get really comfortable, sitting as an act of kindness to yourself. Maybe inhale your shoulders up, exhale them back and down. One more time, inhaling, exhaling. Perhaps rest your hands on your lap, one inside the other. That's the traditional posture. And if you're afraid of falling asleep, you can keep your eyes open and just kind of glance down. Or you can close your eyes. And we'll begin sinking into this awareness practice. See if you can commit to the posture you've chosen for the next 6 or so minutes. And take a moment now to acknowledge the intention of your practice, to quiet the mind, focus the mind, prepare the mind for happiness, and free the mind of suffering. Now begin to notice your breathing. Notice when you are inhaling and when you are exhaling. You can keep the breath just as it is, but begin to witness what is going on. Just noticing, observing, being with the breath as it enters and exits your body. Silently say in your own mind, inhale every time you inhale, and exhale when you exhale. So labeling the breath, inhale, exhale. When you notice the mind wandering, which it will, it's not a problem, it's part of the process. Gently bring it back to the breath without a whole lot of drama. Knowing that every time you come back to the breath, you are quieting the stress and craving centers of your brain. The moment you return to the breath is the moment of mindfulness. Staying with the words inhale, exhale for a few more breaths. Finding this pleasure in transitioning from the complexity of the mind to the simplicity of the breath. And now drop the words inhale, exhale, and tune into the breath as it feels in your nose. Notice that spot where the breath makes contact with your nostrils. And how the air that comes out is warm and moist, like the body itself. Observing this transition of cool air coming in and warm air coming out. And when your mind wanders, come back to the sensation, resting in the feeling of the breath in your body. Bring your attention now to your throat. Relax the throat and begin to feel that gentle, soothing rhythm of the breath going in and out of the throat, going through your throat. Subtle physical sensation, perhaps just a dryness that passes through gently. Can you observe the breath in the throat with curiosity? Or perhaps with affection for this breath that gives you life. Does the sensation change as you bring your awareness to it? Transitioning your awareness now to your chest. Begin to notice this gentle rising and falling of the breath in the chest. As if you were observing a boat on the waves, a boat in the ocean going up and down. Observe your chest rising and falling. As you tune into that motion, you are also tuning into the present and connecting with your own body. Bring that awareness now to your belly. Let the belly relax so the breath can flow easily. And notice the rising and falling of the belly. This gentle rising and falling with the breath. Staying with the breath. Now bring your awareness to the place you feel the breath the most, whether the nose or the throat, the chest, the belly, or somewhere else in the body. And bring a gentle half smile to your lips and notice if that makes observing the breath easier. And release that awareness. Since compassion starts with relaxation, let's relax the body. Relax all the muscles around your eyes. Let the eyelids rest softly. Release the forehead. Relax the cheeks. Bring a gentleness and a softness to the jaw. Relax even the sinuses and the inner ear. Find softness in the lips, softness in the throat. Relax even the skin on your face, bringing ease into the shoulders. Release the weight of the back into the chair. Relax the pelvis, the belly. Let the arms be heavy. Let the legs be heavy. Let the legs also be soft. Feel the feet. Thank the feet for bringing you here today to this room. And perhaps thank yourself for coming. To cultivate compassion, to be a force of good in the world. As we come to the end of the practice, thanking yourself and knowing that this mindfulness practice was an act of self-compassion and an act of compassion for others. Begin to tune back into the room by opening your ears first. You will hear the sound of a bell. Listen to the sound, and when you can no longer hear it, begin to open your eyes. So welcome back. Our PowerPoint keeps going on and off, but I hope it'll cooperate. So an important question I have for you is, What does this have to do with compassion? Any guesses? You might have read some of the book. You probably have a mindfulness practice. Focusing on the breath and the way we just did, how is that related to compassion? Any answers are welcome. Any guesses? The wildest guesses? Yes.
The only way to be present for another is to not be, first you have to be calm, and so that you can be present for another and not be obsessing with your own thoughts and drama.
Yes, wonderful. So what I heard you say is that to even connect to another person, we can't be so much in the drama of our minds that we aren't there. Absolutely. And I can even add to that compassion always happens in the present, right? It's very hard to be compassionate in the past or compassionate in the future. It's always in the present. So we need to be able to connect what is there in front of us or what is there even within us, if it's self-compassion, to be able to have that compassionate response. Thank you. And you need to connect to yourself to even have that stability to offer to another person. Yes. Anyone else?
The awareness of one.
The awareness of?
One, of self.
The awareness of one, of self. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
The focus on the breath and where it goes and everything was helped us to also focus on our own bodies, because what we feel on a micro level in our bodies as well. And sometimes people are disconnected from their bodies.
Right.
And that would impair their ability to feel compassion or generate it.
Thank you. So this very important aspect of connecting to our own bodies. Connecting to ourself isn't very different from connecting to another being. So if we are able to fully connect with ourselves, our compassion goes up automatically. It's kind of cool thing about training mindfulness, compassion, and self-compassion is that wherever you start, you also train the other two. The scientists have found that whenever you increase your mindfulness, just doing this breath focus practice, your compassion and your self-compassion immediately go up. One of the suggestions for being this force of good is doing at least 5 minutes of this breath focus practice every day. So I think in future sessions, Bob will talk more about the Buddhism and kind of the very deep aspects of it. And in this session, I'll talk about the very practical ones, kind of the scientific and the practical. And the most practical advice that I can give is do this 5 minutes of breath focus a day. You just did it with me, which means I know you can. Commit to at least 5 minutes of sitting with your breath. And as you do this, you are seeing something very clearly, paying attention, and it'll help you see things clearly in your life. I want to go more into why this is compassion. In this practice, we're willing to see what the mind does, where the breath is, whether our mind is paying attention or not, but we don't jump to blaming the mind when it wanders, or self-criticism, or just giving up when our mind wandered from the breath. We see that the mind has wandered, we see it for what it is, maybe it's interesting, and then we find the breath again. This is very similar to sticking to a path of compassion, where we might stray from it from time to time, but we always want to come back. And the quicker we come back, the better. The less blaming or criticism there is, the better. It trains us to set a goal in our lives, to set a value or a path, and come back. For anything you decide to do, you won't do it 100% perfectly every single day, every single moment. It's a fact that you'll have resistance, and some days you will, some days you won't, but the really important thing is to be able to return. So this noticing and returning mechanism works in the same way in the brain with the breath as it works with any lofty goal, like being a compassionate person. So anything you really care for and want in your own life, coming back to the breath will help you follow through with it, because it taps into those intention networks of the mind. So coming back to the breath is the same neural process as coming back to a value. Something else that mindfulness has to do with compassion or happiness is learning to stay put. Sometimes we're unable to be with suffering, whether we're unable to even contemplate a terrorist attack or a loved one suffering. We can't even think about it. So we either run away from it, kind of ignore it completely, could say, well, I can't do anything, I'm just going to ignore it. Or we try to fix it very quickly. We try to kind of have an immediate fix. And this immediate fix isn't too different from like immediate gratification. And it doesn't always happen thoughtfully. Kind of the immediate fix might not be the wise one. Staying with the breath, staying put, being able to be with a situation as opposed to just do, fix, that allows insight to emerge and warm feeling and space to offer someone perhaps emotional support, warmth, kindness. The breath is always a source of stability you can turn to in times of suffering. Perhaps when you want to stay present with someone and it's hard, for a few moments you can return to your breath. It's like you gather that awareness, you gather that affectionate, warm-hearted awareness on the breath, and then you can shine it out to any other person in the world. So you gather that kind of light of awareness, and then you can share it with someone else. Gather that spotlight, you can shine it on another person. So there's nothing wrong with coming back to the breath as often as you need to throughout the day when you want to keep your attention constant. And really, attention is the ultimate gift. Attention is a form of generosity. An interesting scientific study found that just staying present, having a stranger in the room with a person in pain, already reduced that person's experience of pain. So a person's pain can be lowered by just having another person there, sitting with them, silent, but paying attention to them. And another part of this breath-focused practice is a kind of self-compassion towards one's own minds and habits and emotions. Our minds can be a scary place. And being able to be with the mind as it is. Sometimes the mind wanders, sometimes it has all kinds of thoughts, all kinds of emotions, and realizing that thoughts and emotions can come through and we don't have to fully identify with them. We can identify with our intention. You can identify with wanting to be a force of good in the world, wanting to act on compassion, wanting to act wisely, or courageously, or generously, or open-heartedly. All of those are great things to identify with. But those crazy thoughts that come into our mind, these minds that are so kind of competitive and threatened and all over the place, this practice allows us to not overly identify with them and to be with this mind from a place of self-compassion. You can always remember that the mind evolved to protect you from threats, so it'll detect those threats anywhere and everywhere. You can kind of use that clarity to say, well, is this really accurate? Do I really believe this? And you are not your thoughts, and you don't have to believe every thought. Instead, you can come back to that intention of perhaps wanting to be that mindful, compassionate person. So that's what mindfulness has to do with compassion. Mindfulness also has a lot to do with happiness. Getting back to that idea from the Dalai Lama that you can even be compassionate just as a way of being selfish to be happy. Compassion can come from a place of selfishness because it's compassion that will lead us to happiness. There's a great study from 2010. When I mentioned this to my past students, it turned out that a past student of mine actually participated in this study. There were 2,250 volunteers, and they tracked every 2 hours what they were doing and where their mind was. So a Harvard University study published in a fantastic scientific magazine where every couple hours a person checked in, where is your mind, what are you doing, and how happy are you? And it turned out that our minds wander about 49.6% of the time. What we're doing and what we're thinking about, what we're paying attention to, are different things about half of the time, which is enormous. So that's an interesting finding. It's like we're not bringing the quality of attention to our actions 49.6% of the time. That's half of the story. The other half is that when we do pay attention, we are much happier. So doing your least favorite household task, maybe it's washing the dishes. So like washing the dishes and thinking about the wonderful vacation you're going to have and imagining you're already on the beach and basking in the sun and having a margarita, that'll make you less happy than doing the dishes and paying attention to the dishes. That's a huge finding, that being where you are right now makes you happier than any daydream or thought or ideal reality you can construct in your mind. Somehow the present, being in the present, makes us happier. And there's that warm water. There's the wonderful sound of the water pouring on your hands, the dish gradually getting cleaner. Where if you do the dishes that way, it becomes a meditation, it becomes fulfilling, and you're connected to yourself, you're connected to a quality. You can do the dishes with warmth. You can do any small action as an act of love. It's the bigger intention that matters. Maybe you do the dishes for beauty, to create beauty in your home. Maybe you do them so you can serve a meal to a loved one. Maybe you can do them so you can have a meal yourself and kind of having that meal with appreciation for all the people involved in making that meal possible. Anything you can do with a higher intention and with warm-heartedness. I think that's a practice in and of itself, bringing that attention, that warm-heartedness to the smallest action. And then every action becomes a ritual, every action becomes rewarding. So it's not like eating that hamburger and driving and listening to the radio all at the same time. That might be the opposite. If you're eating, enjoying that bite, letting that bite be a feast. If you're driving, focusing on that. And maybe wishing, may you be happy to the other drivers. Maybe like someone gets in front of you, and instead of saying, damn it, I hate you, you're an awful person, saying, oh, may you be happy, may you get where you're going on time, wishing well. Another way of connecting to the present is truly wishing well to every person who crosses your line of vision. There's this great piece of a poem from William Carlos Williams. As the rain falls, so does your love. Bathe every open object in the world. As the rain falls, so does your love. Bathe every open object in the world. So you can take that warm-heartedness. You can look at a painting, a photograph, a person, nature with warm-heartedness. And then every glance becomes a glance of compassion. You can look at all things through the eyes of compassion. If it's a scene of suffering, with the wish, may you be well. I truly wish for your long-term well-being. Whoever you are alive. You have senses, you're a sentient being. I wish for your long-term well-being. That's the Dalai Lama. This is mentioned in the book, that as he was giving a talk, he saw a bug in the room. So like me sitting in front of people, and he saw a bug in the room. He wanted to make sure that bug is safe outside and doesn't get killed. That's a way of looking at all things with eyes of compassion that we can take as an example. The biggest gift you can give yourself is paying attention with this warm-heartedness that combines mindfulness and compassion and joy all into one. And we use these words like, this is mindfulness, this is mudita, this is compassion. And it's more for pedagogical purposes. It's just this one attitude of being fully present with an attitude of affection that kind of includes all the above, being present with affection. And that's the attitude that allows us to do so much good in the world. If you are a person who can do that, others will feel wonderful around you. You will be giving joy to people just by your presence, and your actions will follow suit. So a little bit about the science of doing this mindfulness meditation. As you were just doing this breath focus meditation, you were increasing cortical thickness in your hippocampus. And your hippocampus is responsible for learning and memory. Another great argument for bringing this into schools, but also to any living person. The part of your brain that plays a role in emotion regulation and self-referential processing kind of gets more robust. So meditating is a lot like lifting weights and building a muscle. A neuroscientist can actually see parts of the brain get robust and thicker and work better with meditation. It's like if you do math, you get better at math. If you play catch all the time, you get much better at catching. If you focus on your breath, what you get better at is self-control and impulse control. And if you think about it, controlling our impulses allows us to act as a bigger self rather than by instinct. By instinct, many of us will act about the same. It's like when we're really stressed, we're hungry and unhappy and tired and wanting to nag at people and snap at people. That's probably true of most of us when we're really stressed. When we follow our higher self, that's when the creativity comes in, and vision, and kind of individual, authentic good qualities we have. If we can have self-control and impulse control that breath focus teaches us, we're able to become who we really are. kind of the treasures inside can become apparent. We can act on those rather than acting on like every little instinct. So increasing cortical thickness is what just happened in your brain, at least a little bit, as you were doing this practice. After 3 hours, you could see the difference in a scanner. So if you were to do this for 3 hours, you can see the difference. After 11 hours, your self-control gets noticeably better. So this meditation is really an investment that builds up. An area of the brain that decreases in size from breath focus is the amygdala. And that's the part of the brain responsible for freaking out. That part of the brain reduces. It's the one that feels threatened for no reason. The brain cell volume of that area actually gets smaller. And as you're meditating, you're, of course, improving your focus and your concentration. I like a phrase by Zen teacher Sherry Huber, that the quality of your life is the quality of your attention. The quality of your life is the quality of your attention. Because the attention you bring to a relationship is really how that relationship is going to go. The attention you bring to your work is whether you can make that work of the highest quality. The attention you bring to enjoying yourself, if you really enjoy yourself with your full attention, that enjoyment, that pleasure rises. So really the quality of anything you do is the quality of your attention. And I'm saying all this to really convince you that it's worth doing your mindfulness practice. Your brains also become kind of these finely tuned willpower machines with breath focus, allowing you to also beat addictions or not have an addictive personality. So that's mindfulness. One side of it that leads us to compassion. Compassion is connecting to suffering. But first, I want to connect to joy, because to me, really, the Dalai Lama embodies a person who connects to joy everywhere, every moment, keeps the lightheartedness. There's so many images of him just laughing, like making jokes, making faces, entertaining people, kind of without putting anyone down, just to share laughter, to share smiles, to share human happiness. I think a big part of being on this earth is appreciating being here. There is so much we can complain about, and then there is so much we can appreciate. One of my favorite scenes from War and Peace by Lev Tolstoy is Andrei Bolkonsky. I'm Russian, so I always have these Russian literature references, which I find very Buddhist in a way. But he's lying on his back. He thinks he's dying, and he sees the sky. And he feels like he's never seen anything more beautiful than the sky. He keeps looking at it. He says, kind of all of life is worth living just to be able to see the grandeur of this blue sky. That's connecting to the appreciation of life. And we don't have to wait until our last moment to do that. We can do that much more often. In the book, I was told to reference the book as often as I can, just to bring this together. So in the book, Daniel Goldman writes that the Dalai Lama flavors joy with compassion. Flavors compassion with joy. Flavors compassion with joy. And I think that should be a habit we should really get into. So it's not all like suffering, 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 connect to suffering. They're both equally present at all times. Life is 1,000 joys, 1,000 sorrows. Let's learn to connect to the sorrows. Let's also learn to connect to the joys. From page 10, the Dalai Lama lives by unique emotional settings and social algorithms, an emphatic attention to those around him, humor and spontaneity, and a leveling sense of the oneness of the human family. Also from the Dalai Lama, the purpose of our spiritual practice is to fulfill our desire for happiness. He mentions many purposes, but one is to fulfill our desire for happiness. There's nothing selfish about that. Compassion is the wish that all beings be happy. If you have a spiritual practice to make this one being happy, if you make this one human being happier, which is yourself, that is also fulfilling a spiritual practice. So we will do a joy meditation, both the joy in our own lives, and we'll think of a friend and connect to the joy in their lives. This is where this joy practice can get tricky, because when you hear that a friend is doing really, really great, just unusually great, how do you react? How do we usually react when we hear that a good friend of ours is just doing fantastic? it's not always being happy for them, unfortunately. It's not always, I'm so happy that person is doing well. It tends to be comparison. Well, how am I doing? How did they get there? All these other thoughts that aren't really joyful thoughts. And I want to guide you in a meditation that steers us away from Schadenfreude, or being happy and feeling superior, and towards letting joy be joy. Just anyone who's happy, that's adding to general happiness and being able to connect to that. So we will do this also brief practice, maybe about 5 or 6 minutes with your permission. If you feel ready to do another one, we'll do a brief practice of connecting to joy in our own life and joy in the life of a friend as well, and just letting that joy grow exponentially. Again, I think a skill the Dalai Lama absolutely has, and one we can definitely work on, all of us. We'll start with just this nice primer of finding joy in the body, or imagining joy in the body, to kind of get into the mood. So we'll do a little body, also between mindfulness and joy, and then we'll transition into mudita, or the practice of rejoicing in the joy of ourselves and another. So again, find that seat that feels very self-compassionate, very grounded. I recommend that your feet are flat on the ground, kind of this balanced, solid body position. Gently close your eyes. And wish for the body. May my body feel joy and relaxation. May my body feel ease and joy and relaxation. Letting that wish sink in. Bring awareness to the forehead and release the forehead. Release the eyebrows and even relax the space between the eyebrows. Now imagine a smile that begins at the center of your brow and curls up across your forehead. So there's a big smile coming from the relaxation on your forehead. Imagine the smile and feel how it soothes. Feel how it relaxes. How even the suggestion of a smile brings a kind of serenity. And bring awareness to your chest, coming back to that feeling of the ribs and the chest moving as you breathe. Noticing that gentle stretch in the chest, that spaciousness, maybe even spaciousness of heart with every in-breath. That space created at the heart. That expansion as the breath enters the body. And then that softening and letting go. Now imagine a huge smile that starts at the center of your chest and spreads out across your chest. A joyful smile right in the heart area. Maybe the heart with a smile like the Dalai Lama's. Pure joy. Let this heart smile transform into radiant golden light that glows through your chest. Imagining that light at your heart. Ease and joy right in the heart area. May this heart be happy. May every heart in this room be joyful and happy and at peace. May every heart in the world be joyful and happy and at peace. Now draw your attention to your lower belly. We tend to store stress and tension in the belly, so unfurl the belly, just let it relax. Rest your attention again on the movement of the breath in the belly. And use the power of your imagination to imagine a curve at each side from your hip bones, like a very pleasant smile all across the belly, all across that area. Let that smile spread wide and welcome any sensations, feelings that arise. And now bring a smile to your lips, letting that smile join all the others. Enjoying that ease and stillness in the body. And now that we've prepped the body, bring to mind something you appreciate about your life right now, something that brings you joy. Not something you'd put on a resume or brag about, but something that genuinely gives you joy daily. Maybe it's your cat, or a loved one, or a meal you have often. Maybe an opportunity you've received, a connection with someone, an activity that you just love doing. Bring to mind something that's truly a blessing in your own life right now, that warms your heart or brings affection and joy to your heart. And let yourself take delight in it, in the feeling that it gives you, and the opportunity to be alive and experience it. And allow your heart to feel gratitude. Gratitude for this blessing. Wishing for yourself, may this happiness and joy continue. May the joy in my life grow and flourish. May I be happy. And now take some time to appreciate your own good qualities. Maybe thinking of one thing you truly appreciate about yourself. For example, that you are here tonight cultivating compassion. Your own warm heart, generosity, your own good intentions, the fact that you care, your commitment to learning. Allow yourself to appreciate that about yourself. And open your heart to gratitude. Gratitude that there is a Tibet House. Gratitude for New York City and all it has to offer. Gratitude to study with great teachers like Bob Thurman. Gratitude for the things in our daily life, like sunlight, snow, the sound of the rain, friendships, the taste of a hot drink on a cold day. Allow yourself to acknowledge that your life is filled with so many even little things that you can feel grateful for. You can take joy in if you just allow yourself to pay attention. Gratitude for all the good books you've read, and that there are so many good ones to still read. For the beautiful music you've listened to, the way a warm sweater feels on your skin, and for the earth, for nature, for the earth and all that it provides. Gratitude for the senses and the satisfaction they can give us, and for value, meaning, your intentions, connection, and the satisfaction those can give us too. Letting gratitude fill your heart like a warm glow of light in some self-mudita. And now imagine a good friend who you perceive as happy or experiencing good fortune or joy right now. Someone who you saw who was happy or satisfied. Imagining that friend happy and at ease. Perhaps imagining a loved one at the happiest you've ever seen them. Allow yourself to connect to that joy. That isn't it wonderful that you are experiencing something that makes you happy? Let their happiness be your happiness. Wish for this person from this place of open-hearted joy. May your happiness and joy continue. I know you felt suffering in the past and joy in the past and suffering in the present and joy in the present. May the joy continue. May whatever joy you have continue to grow. I rejoice in your joy. I delight in your happiness. Offering these gestures of appreciative joy. I rejoice in your joy. And I want everything for you. I want happiness for you, delight and joy and well-being and good fortune for you. Feeling your heart open with this connection to human happiness. I will delight in your joy unconditionally. One definition of love is, I want nothing from you and I want everything for you. Can you wish for that person? I want everything for you. And now think of a person who you perceive as suffering right now, someone who's experiencing difficulty. When there is suffering, we tend to focus on the suffering. But once you bring this person to mind who you feel like is struggling right now, can you find something in your life that you know brings him or her joy? Is there something that among the stress or the hardship brings that person happiness? Some aspect of joy in their lives. Can you find that? Sending the wish to this person who is suffering. May any joy you are experiencing, may that continue. Even as you're going through this hard time, may you still see beauty. May you still find joy in everyday pleasures. May whatever joy you have grow. May it take root and may it blossom and fill your life with joy. Celebrating even a small degree of happiness. Whatever happiness is there, may it bring you peace and delight, and may it ease your suffering. Ending with some wishes of loving kindness. May you experience happiness and health. May you feel joy. May you feel so much joy that you spread that joy to others. May you find so much happiness that you radiate that happiness to all those you encounter. May you be happy. And now imagining all beings who are at ease in this moment. Maybe all those doing a joy meditation like you yourself, or all those who are happy in this very second. Bringing into the heart's mind the idea of every happy heart around the world, and wishing for all those hearts. May the love you feel continue. Whether it's the Dalai Lama or a friend or countless strangers, may the ease and love you feel, may they continue. May your joy be my joy, and our joy. May every seed of joy in this world take root and flourish, blossom, and bring great happiness to all beings. As the Dalai Lama puts it, there are so many people in this world, it simply makes sense to make their happiness a source of our own, that our chances of experiencing joy are then enhanced 6 billion to 1. He says those are very good odds. So with this in mind, wish all beings, may you be happy. May any joy you feel continue. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be safe and peaceful. May I rejoice in the joy of all others, and may any joy in the world add on to my joy, to the beauty of the heart. And now honoring yourself for having done this practice and dedicating the merits of the last few minutes to the joy of all beings everywhere. Still keeping that smile on your face as you open your ears to the sound of the bell, and perhaps listening to that sound with that appreciation of all the beautiful sounds that we can hear that can bring us joy. So that was some joy meditation. How did that go for you? See some nods. Sometimes I like to start a compassion session with this joy meditation because I think the two balance each other out. That yes, there's suffering, and yes, there's joy, and let's connect to everything. So this is a way to connect to joy. So we have a choice of where the heart and mind dwell. We meditate, we have that choice, and states become traits. Kind of the more scientific, funny way of saying this is neurons that fire together, wire together. But any state, wherever the heart and mind dwells for any period of time, that becomes the inclination of the heart and mind, known as neuroplasticity or affective plasticity scientifically. It's really this simple idea that the state you spend some time in becomes more and more who you are and what your mind and heart does naturally. And I want to mention that when you do these meditations, you don't have to feel every single word. You don't have to be there really feeling it. You just stay with the intention, say the words, trying it out. And as you do this, you're planting that seed. You're planting the seed for that state. And your inner climate will still shift over time. But with these practices, the recommendation is to do them daily. And over time, it will shift. So it's not like you do this once, and then like the joy will last forever and ever, and you will always feel joy in everyone's joy. Maybe it's not that quick, but if you stay with the practice, it incrementally adds happiness, and adds awareness, and adds joy, and adds connection. It's like drop by drop, your mind shifts, your mind changes, it becomes more of a trait and less of a state. But the nice thing is that you have a choice. The mind can feel like this uncontrollable wild beast that's in charge, but you have control over the states, and therefore, over time, you also have control over your own traits. And it's the Buddhist view that anyone can change at any moment. It's so important not to really judge people by what you are seeing right now, because you don't know their journey they're on, and anyone can change to any degree. And really, the psychology confirms that we are very capable of change. The cells in our bodies change. The way our brains work can change. So that's kind of the scientific part of why meditate, because our brains change and our emotions follow suit. So now that we're all warmed up with joy, let's talk about compassion. I will talk about the science of compassion. We will define compassion and do a compassion, maybe a small self-compassion, common humanity meditation, and then a kind of a bigger compassion meditation. I don't have a watch on me, but what time are we? 8:10. It's good. So we have plenty of time to do all of this. So I want to start out by taking the view from long, long ago of how compassion allowed our species to survive. If it wasn't for compassion, we wouldn't have survived as human beings. A very interesting source for this that you wouldn't expect is actually Charles Darwin. The way he uses sympathy in this quote is similar to how we use compassion. Sympathy will have been increased through natural selection for those communities which included the greatest number of the most sympathetic members would flourish best and rear the greatest number of offspring. So it is, according to Darwin, although we associate him with survival of the fittest, I think his work has been mischaracterized in some ways, but he is the one that wrote in Descent of Man that compassion was selected for. Compassion was a selected for trait. I think it's very fascinating. So we have a native capacity for compassion. It's not like compassion is this gene that like the Dalai Lama has and other people don't have. Some of us have it, some of us don't. It's an adaptive instinct. It's intrinsic to human nature. And it helps our survival both as individuals and as communities. So this line of thinking depends on 3 ways that compassion helps us survive as a species. The first is that compassion protects vulnerable offspring. The Dalai Lama mentions that you can even see this compassion in animals, that if kind of a mom cat will take care of a kitten, or if an animal sees that you're down, that animal will come to your lap and comfort you if it's like your pet. Animals are in tune with it too. Mammals are in tune with compassion. If it wasn't for compassion, human babies would never survive, because when they cry and when we want to comfort them, when we want to make sure they're okay, that's compassion. And interesting about the science is that when you give someone a compassion training and put them an MRI scan and show them a stranger suffering and kind of tell them how this compassionate response you've been taught, the response they have, this compassionate well-wishing, and the MRI scan, it looks very similar to a mom when she kind of is comforting her baby. So like a mother with her child, that's what compassion in your brain can look like for any being with training. And that's an interesting state. So the baby is crying, but the mother doesn't feel distressed in that moment of that compassionate response. It's like, I am here, I can take care of you. She's maybe even soothed, kind of lulling this baby. That's the sense of compassion, that you feel like I can be there to help, I am there for you. And it's a very grounded, centered well-wishing. And it's amazing that we can have this for any human being. But it really started with offspring. Compassion also increases attractiveness to mates. It's really the mates that would either save the day or just simply listen to you, be in tune with your needs, that would kind of have the greatest number of children pass down their genes the most for men and women. So increases attractiveness to mates. The one who would make sure you're fed and not only him or herself, make sure the children were fed, not only him or herself, would be the more attractive ones. And when the world looked more like this, when there was a scarcity of resources, compassion provided a kind of social credit. So members of the community who would share when you needed something and they had extra resources are the same ones who would receive help when they didn't have the resources. So being compassionate to others kind of gave this social credit, cooperation, and allowed communities to survive. So 3 ways that it was adaptive. Now that we're on this evolutionary perspective, I want to talk a little bit about the brain. First of all, why is the brain so important? Well, every experience you have is mediated by your own mind. There's nothing even happening in your body that you notice until your mind becomes aware of it. So mindfulness is really tending to our inner experiences, our mental experiences, because everything you're paying attention to is actually a mental experience. You hearing my voice is your mental experience. You feeling something in the body is your own mental experience, because you're not aware of it until you pay attention to that mental experience. So it's not like there's things I pay attention to outside and inside. Yes, but they're all mental experiences. You have no experience of anything until your mind processes it. So one definition of mindfulness is paying attention to your own mental experiences with affection and curiosity and non-judgment. So that's the brain and why it's so important. And I want to talk about these two sides to our brain. We have kind of an older part to our brain, the old brain that developed 22 to 25 million years ago. And this part of our brain is still there, and it's very similar to like the brain of our family dog. It's a brain that has emotions, motives, wants relationships, and is very attuned to status, wants to be like the alpha male, the alpha female, wants attention, wants to ally with those in charge. That's kind of the old brain. And this is also the brain that's very much in the present and very much follows instinct. We would be very mindful if that was the end of the story. If our whole brain was this, we would be very mindful and very in the present, and we wouldn't be nearly as distressed as we are. But there's this transition that happened from the old brain to the new brain, and it looks a lot like this. So you eat, survive, reproduce, eat, survive, reproduce, eat, survive, reproduce, and finally, you have an existential crisis. You hit the new brain, and you have a huge existential crisis, and you come to Tibet House for some answers. The question, what's it all about? What is my role in the world? Who am I? What's my identity? How should I live? Is there a God? Is there reincarnation? What happens after death? What do other people think of me, and does it matter, and should I change that? That's the new brain talking. All very interesting questions. And what's it all about? Well, one very good answer is being a force for good. Finding your own happiness and helping others find their happiness, I think, is a very good question to this. What's it all about, since it's here on the PowerPoint. But it's more to show old brain and then suddenly new brain. So this new brain, very recent, only about 2 million years ago, it's involved in imagining, planning, ruminating, our sense of self. So we can think about ourselves, not only kind of act by instinct, but be like, who is this person? What is this person like? Should I make this decision? Should I not make this decision? Prefrontal cortex becomes very active. This brain is also the brain that can give into rumination and depression and anxiety. So the benefits are it gives us the capacity for language, for science, for philosophy, for advanced medicine, for self-awareness and culture and the arts and all those wonderful things that really make life interesting, worth living, that help us transcend our experience. That's the new brain. But the drawbacks is that it stops us from being in the present, leads to anxiety, leads to depression. If we were having if like a zebra, for example, has something that looks more like the old brain, if a zebra on a peaceful Wednesday evening was grazing out in Africa somewhere and just having a nice evening, having her dinner, and suddenly heard the footsteps of a lion, heard a lion approaching, the zebra would immediately go into stress mode, right? Heartbeat would go up. She would run away and say she's getting away from that lion. She doesn't know if she'll make it, but the zebra gets away. Within a few minutes, that zebra would be back to grazing and back to the present, and her heartbeat and her state would be the same as before the experience. That's the benefit of the old brain. If it was a human being, if one of us were having our dinner somewhere in Africa, and then a lion started to chase us, it would take us a very long time to get back to being peaceful. We'd wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh my gosh, what would have happened? Kind of tomorrow morning, like, oh my gosh, what if that zebra had caught me? What would have happened? We would have tons of distress for weeks and weeks, talk about the experience, worry about the experience, and have a bunch of questions about God and life and death, right? That's the old brain. It keeps us from being completely in the present. One of the scientific reasons why mindfulness and compassion is so helpful to this old brain, new brain dynamic is that the old brain loops with the new brain. So this old brain was capable of reacting to the threat of the lion, kicking into stress mode. But the old brain is the one that thinks about it and projects into the future and thinks about it in the past, thinks about it in the future. That's called the loop between old brain and new brain. Or we have an old brain that seeks status, and we have a new brain that checks Facebook and worries about like the number of likes we have on Facebook and worries about like our status in relation to other people based on that. Old brain, new brain loops. kind of anxiety about things in the past and the present is the new brain, but that anxiety can stem from something triggered by the old brain. So these loops can be very hard to get out of because we have such enormous powers of imagination, such good memories, such a good ability to remember all that's bad from the past and to think that that bad is going to continue. That's an old brain, new brain loop. And one way to break that is mindfulness and compassion, this warm attitude and paying attention to the present. So far in the science, we talked about why compassion made us successful in the past. That's the attractiveness, cooperation, taking care of offspring. It made us successful in the past. One way it can make us successful right now is giving us that inner peace that we need. We can keep the benefits of language and identity and philosophy and the big questions. We can keep that, and we can also have inner peace. And I think Buddhism teaches us a path to do that. The Dalai Lama teaches us a way of doing that. And the new science of compassion teaches us a way to do that. In case you're not convinced enough that compassion is an enormously good idea, I want to talk a little bit more about the science, the scientific benefits to being compassionate right now. And this book mentions some of them, but I think maybe I'll organize them in a different way, present them in a slightly different way. So physical health. Being a more compassionate, mindful person gives more stability of blood pressure, and lowers levels of inflammation. So physical health. Our sensation of pain actually declines. So how painful you'd think an electric shock was. And if you were to rate an electric shock on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're a meditator would rate something as kind of medium, that a non-meditator would say it's medium, a meditator would say it's mild. So how much pain you feel actually decreases with a mindfulness compassion practice. So the experience is there, but you just don't perceive it as painful. You still feel the same thing, but to you it doesn't feel as painful, which is fascinating. The first step is finding these results, and now what the scientists are doing is figuring out why is this so? Kind of what's the dynamic behind this? What's the dynamic behind this shift in perception? And that's the new research now. Genuine happiness and compassion go hand in hand, the Dalai Lama says. According to the science, compassion leads to greater happiness and optimism, much greater relationship satisfaction. And really, it's relationship satisfaction that determines our happiness, much more so than money or status or material well-being. It's how close and secured you feel in the relationships with friends and family that determines our happiness throughout our entire lives, not really accomplishments. And compassion and mindfulness is a protection from depression and anxiety, which goes back to that old brain, new brain loop. The first one to benefit from compassion is the one who feels it. Loving is of even greater importance than being loved. So important. We can't really control all the time whether we're loved. If you're the kind of person that meditates on compassion every day, I think you're much more easy to be around. That's it really strengthens relationships. But in the end, you can't control who loves you, who wants to spend time with you. You can control how much you love. You can control how much you open your heart, how much you wish well, and that will determine the benefits you get from compassion. Not from how many people love you or admire you or care for you, how much you care for others. I think that's what makes CCARE's work so important, because we can teach the people skills for compassion. That's what makes the Dalai Lama's work so important, his vision. If you can teach people the skills for compassion, they're the ones happy. You're the ones getting health and happiness and satisfaction and meaning. No one can take that away from you. A person not caring can't take that away from you. So it's something you have and you get to keep. This starts as early as 2 years old. So 2-year-olds get more happiness giving someone a treat than receiving a treat. They get more pleasure out of giving something than receiving something. We have 3 main types of emotion regulation systems. We have 3 main emotional modes. This is Paul Gilbert's work of England. We either want something. This is the drive, excitement, vitality. I want this. Sounds like, American high achievers. Or we're protecting ourselves from threat, safety-seeking, protection-seeking. As soon as we want something and we can't really get it, we go into threat mode. So wanting something and feeling threatened are very, very connected. So if we want to accomplish something and suddenly we have a doubt or we're confused or we think maybe we won't get it, we're in threat mode. We can spend our whole lives between wanting something and feeling threatened and wanting something and feeling threatened. And I think that a lot of my generation, kind of young with goals, want to do this in life, want to achieve this, you can just bounce back and forth, and that leads to so much burnout. When you bring in compassion, you trigger this third green mode, which is safety. I'm soothed. I'm content. I'm safe and connected in this moment. So there's that happiness of pleasure that compassion leads to. But there's also that happiness of I'm content and soothed and calm. And that's a very important part of happiness. So compassion has this very powerful ability to both trigger our pleasure centers. So the pleasure centers is like when you eat cake or see the person you're attracted to or gamble, pleasure centers, and our deep safety, connected contentment centers. It addresses both. So it gives us happiness on two levels, on kind of the level of pleasure and the level of deep contentment. So 2 in 1. Be compassionate, you get 2 in 1. 2 kind of happiness in 1. So I mentioned that compassion also gives us pleasure. It actually triggers our addiction network, which I think is very interesting, that compassion can be seen as something addicting, and I'll tell you why. I mentioned all these things that give us pleasure. So our wonderful iPhones, when we first start playing with them, they're so much fun. Like chocolate, pleasure center is stimulated. The problem with a lot of thrills that give us pleasure is that like you get this great iPhone, and for like a day or two, you're so happy with it, and then it just becomes normal. And the pleasure just kind of plateaus. Or if I were to start eating a cake, and maybe I have one mindful bite, and I have a second mindful bite, and it's wonderful, but by the time I eat the whole cake, you don't get the same pleasure. Like out of that last bite, I won't be getting the same pleasure. So maybe one of the tragedies of life is that pleasure declines over time. We can't hold on to that feeling of intense pleasure. Like if you watch a movie you love, you'll like it. If you watch it the 10th time, you won't get that intense pleasure you did the first time. So pleasures decline over time. That's actually a form of suffering that Dalai Lama talks about. One of the forms of suffering of human life is that pleasure decreases. And things we used to get pleasure from, over time we no longer get pleasure from. The good news is that compassion works differently. The pleasure you get from compassion does not decrease over time. It stimulates your pleasure center, and that stimulation is just as strong, and the rush of pleasure you get from being compassionate to another person, connecting, being there for them, is just as strong over time. And not only is it just as strong, it gets stronger with time. The more you practice compassion, the more of that pleasure experience you get over time. So kind of cool that it's the only so far found thing in life that gives us more pleasure over time and not less. So this is Barbara Fredrickson's work of North Carolina. So some other benefits of mindfulness compassion is that you become smarter, think more clearly. 3 areas of the brain become more robust: hippocampus, cerebellum, posterior cingulate cortex. So those regions are involved in making meaning, self-regulation, perception, decoding, solving problems, memory, and learning. So as you're sitting there in your mindfulness meditation and you think, oh, I'm just doing nothing for 5 minutes, you're really improving all these skills. You're improving your ability to make meaning, to learn, your memory, to solve problems, including in daily life. Often people come out of a meditation and they have important insights as to what they can do, how they should behave. There's another area of the brain where there is less activity after a mindfulness or compassion meditation, and that's the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, this area of the brain right here behind the eyes. It's very important because it's the part of the brain, this is new brain, that keeps track of who we are, what we want, our values, our identity, and the difference between better and best or good and bad. It's our executive function. That's like the CEO of our brains, right over here. The interesting part to this story is that every time you make one of those negative judgments about someone, like, what is that person wearing? Or, that was so stupid of me. Or, I can't believe he said that. Or, why is it so cold? Right? Like, you know, not like fact, like, oh, it's kind of chilly outside. That's just like an observation. But like, oh, why is it so cold? You know, like those kind of loaded with emotion, that nagging, those thoughts we have. All of those thoughts, those judgments, also stimulate the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. And the more they stimulate the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the more active this area of executive function is, the less skillful it is at doing what it's supposed to do or of keeping track of identities. The more we judge others, the less able we are to really make those good decisions and keep track of who we are and what we want. So another reason to practice compassion, because if you are connecting to reality as it is with warmth, you're not having those negative judgments. And you don't want to have them anyway because they're just annoying to you. You're the one who suffers from them, not like, so do other people, but so do you. So just to increase overall joy. One little way is just to stop kind of having those sharp emotional judgments. And your ventromedial prefrontal cortex will work better as a result. So that's part of the story that we think more clearly with mindfulness and compassion. Something that Dan Goldman and the Dalai Lama mentioned in the book is that a child that gets held a lot has more brain development than a child who doesn't. I just want to show you the difference of a 3-year-old brain of a child who gets a lot of attention from a caregiver and a child who's extremely neglected. So there's a 40% difference of brain development in a child that gets compassion and a child who doesn't. So the final really amazing benefit of compassion is that it's not a stress reaction. This is something that we studied again and again at Stanford. The brain shows it again and again that if you react to suffering with compassion, it is not a stress reaction. So you can be with an experience that feels like suffering, but it's not distressing. It's not distressing to you. And what does that mean? It means you can act as that higher self. Because when you're stressed, you're kind of on autopilot. But if you're not stressed, you can think, oh, well, what's the wise thing to do? Not only do you get the benefit of not being stressed, which is quite a great benefit, but you can also plan your response wisely. So over time, the amygdala, as I mentioned, the part of the brain responsible for freaking out, actually shrinks. So this quote from Haruki Murakami, also a Buddhist and a writer, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Suffering is optional because if you can respond to suffering with compassion, it's no longer suffering. This is what I teach in Stanford's Compassion Cultivation Training, this 8-week program, over and over in different ways, whether it's through readings or lectures or meditation or discussion or class exercise. What's the way you can react to suffering without really having that experience of suffering in yourself, letting it be an experience and wishing well. And then it becomes a pleasurable, positive experience, right? Because compassion in the brain is happiness, not suffering. So we can really transform our daily experience through compassion to one of happiness just by how we react. And this is mind training. So one way to define compassion is a non-stress response to suffering, immensely helpful for our wisdom and our happiness. The other benefit is that we live longer because of compassion. So we've talked about compassion so much. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Play. We talked about it a lot, and I want to give you kind of the experience of finding it in yourself, for yourself, and doing a compassion meditation. So let's actually start with a compassion meditation. This one will take about 15 minutes, so on the longer side. But I want you to really get that direct experience of practicing it. You're probably sick of hearing all the science anyway, but I try to just pick the most important things and present them to you. Kind of, what is compassion in the brain? Why is it important to the brain? But practicing it really does feel wonderful. So we will do a practice in which you'll wish well first to yourself, and then to a loved one, and then to a stranger, then to someone you consider kind of difficult or irritating. So kind of an irritating person, and then to all beings. So you can take a moment now to think first of a person who just inspires all the affection in the world, who you just feel so much affection to. Very uncomplicated relationship. And then think of a stranger, someone you've seen around but have never talked to, maybe someone in this room, someone in your office, in a store, a clerk. And then think of the person who you find quite annoying, maybe not the most difficult person in your life, because we're just starting out, but someone who's irritating. Does everyone have 3 people? Okay. So let's get back into that wonderful meditation posture. Sit comfortably, one hand inside the other, back to that wonderful realm of meditation that I know I wouldn't be able to live without. Gently close your eyes. And begin by acknowledging your own natural aspiration for happiness, for connection, for meaning. And acknowledge your own natural aspiration to be free from suffering. Silently repeat these phrases for yourself. May I be happy. May this heart of mine be truly, deeply happy. May I know peace and joy. May I guide myself toward peace and joy. May I be happy, and may I bring happiness to others. Acknowledging that, yes, I do experience suffering because it is part of being human. Wishing for yourself, may I be a spacious container for all my suffering. May I be a spacious container for all my challenges. Bring something to mind that is creating some stress or pain or suffering for you at this moment. And see if you can bring a kind of tenderness of heart, spaciousness and tenderness of heart to this experience. Letting go of any habitual story or criticism, and instead wish for yourself, may I be kind to myself. May I be free from suffering. May I be spacious enough for this challenge. And notice if a part of you was resisting that. There was any unwillingness or resistance to offering your self-compassion. Perfectly normal. If there was even a bit of resistance, for a moment, keep that resistance in your own open-hearted, compassionate awareness. Wish, may that which is causing resistance to compassion, may that cease and find peace. May anything in me that resists compassion, may it find peace. May any barrier standing between me and compassion for myself and others, may that ease. May that part of me that needs to be peaceful, that part that's holding tight or that's critical, any part of me that needs peace, may that find peace. Whatever it is, may it find peace. May it soften and open, relax and find joy. My physical self, my emotional self. May that which resists compassion cease. Send compassion to any part of you that's agitated, any part of you that's having a hard time. Wishing for yourself, may I be happy, knowing you deserve happiness just by virtue of being alive. And now bring to mind someone you deeply care for. Bring back that image of that person who brings you joy just when you think about them. Notice how you feel when you think of this person. Now consider the fact that just like you, this person has ups and downs in his or her life. Just like you, this person has goals and dreams. Imagine the depth and the multidimensionality of this person. Letting this person be who they are rather than who you imagine them to be. Acknowledge that just like you, this loved one knows what pain feels like, knows what sadness feels like, knows what it's like to feel anger and fear. Acknowledge that just like you, this person also knows what it's like to feel love and joy and happiness. Repeat silently, just like me, this person wishes to be happy and free from suffering. Knowing that this person wants to love and be loved, to contribute and to be appreciated. Wishing for this person with tenderness, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe and feel safe. And may you find peace and joy. May you be so happy that you bring happiness to others. And notice what saying these phrases feels. That genuine concern for this person's needs. That tenderness of heart. That desire to see this loved one happy. Just enjoy this open-hearted compassion. And now bring to mind someone you don't know, a stranger. Someone you have no special sense of closeness or conflict with. And bring this person to mind. And consider the fact that this person, just like you and just like your loved one, has depth, has multidimensionality, contains opposites. Consider the fact that just like you, this person has had many ups and downs in his or her life. Just like you, this person has goals and dreams. You may not know what they are, but you can be sure that this person has goals and dreams, wants to contribute and be appreciated. In his or her heart of hearts, wants to love and be loved. Just like you, this person is of deep concern to someone. He or she is a child to someone, a parent, a spouse, a dear friend to someone, perhaps a mentor or a caretaker to someone. This person is also fully involved in the web of life, just as you are. Consider the fact that, just like you, this person knows what pain, sadness, fear, and anger feel like. Just like you, this person is seeking happiness and wishes to avoid suffering. Just like you seek happiness and don't always seek it in the right ways and wish to avoid suffering and maybe don't always go about it wisely, probably the same for this person. And see if a natural tenderness arises for this human being, just because he or she is human. Know that this person has suffered in many of the same ways you have suffered in, whether sickness or loneliness or feeling inadequate. This person has probably experienced all of those. And on this basis, can you wish for this stranger, may you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you find peace. May you be free from suffering and spacious enough for all your challenges. May you be so happy that you share that happiness with others. Notice how saying those phrases feels. And are you able to have some concern for the needs of this stranger? Some openness towards this fellow human being. And now, for the difficult person, bring to mind someone you find irritating. In your mind's eye, with your eyes closed, just imagine this person. Someone you find annoying or are in competition with or feel like doesn't share your values. See who naturally comes to mind. And be sure to give yourself permission to choose a less challenging person if you need to. Notice how you feel when you think of this person. And now consider the fact that just like you, this person has had ups and downs in his or her life. You don't know whether this period is an up or a down, but those ups and downs are there. Just like you, this person has good days and bad days. And just like you, this person has goals and dreams. This person, too, is an object of deep concern for someone. He or she is a child to someone, a loved one, mentor, dear friend, or a caretaker to someone. Just like you, this person has experienced sadness. This person probably knows what heartbreak feels like and loneliness feels like. Just like you, this person has experienced anger and fear, but also knows what it's like to be loved and what it's like to feel joy. Allow yourself to see a certain multidimensionality to this person too. Just like you, this person seeks love and happiness. And just like you, this person makes mistakes in the search for love and happiness. With this in mind, repeat silently. Just like I don't want to suffer, and just like I want to be happy, so he or she aspires to happiness and wants to overcome suffering. And see if any part of you is willing to wish this person, may you be free from suffering. May you be free from suffering so that you don't cause it to yourself or anyone else. May you experience peace and joy. May you find a deep peace in your heart. Like the Dalai Lama for the Chinese, do it for the people who are difficult for you. refresh the image of this person in your mind and wish for them. May you be free of the things that prevent you from being centered and kind. Just like I wish to be free from anything that prevents me from being centered and kind. May you be free of any barrier standing in the way between you and compassion. If there's any part of you that's causing harm or is hurtful or aggressive, may that part of you find ease. May that part of you find peace. May you be free of anything that leads you to be destructive, just like I want to be free of anything that leads me to be destructive. May anything that is causing us to be enemies, may that cease in the most peaceful way. May you be well and cause those around you to be well. May you be so happy that you share that happiness with others. Notice how saying these phrases feels. Maybe like melting an iceberg right in our hearts. Acknowledging that your friend, your stranger, and the difficult person all equally share this basic yearning to be happy and free from suffering. Their stories, their personalities may be different, but on this basic human level, they're exactly the same. Wishing for all three of them, may each of you experience peace and joy. Acknowledging that the willingness to contemplate compassion towards the person you are having trouble with is an act of compassion in and of itself, as much for you as for this other person. This cultivation of compassion is as much for you as anyone you direct the compassion to. And now let's extend this compassion outwards from these three people. Imagine in your mind's eye everyone in this room, sitting in the room with you, and here with us meditating in their own homes. Everyone present in this talk today. Can you wish for all of us? May we all be happy. All of us participating today, all of us doing this meditation right now, may we all be happy. May we each know the lightness of heart, sending that wish out. Imagining your heart spreading in all directions. Your heart that's large enough for the whole world. Let it embrace the whole world. Imagining everyone in New York City tonight. Everyone in New York City on this evening. Students doing their homework, parents, people in restaurants, those who are sick and those who are healthy, those outside and those inside, young and old, wishing for all those beings. May you all be happy. May everyone in this city find peace and joy. May everyone be at ease in this moment and know the lightness of heart, the joy of existing, and see the beauty all around them. Just like me, all the people in this city want to be happy and want to be free from suffering. May they be happy and free from suffering. And letting your heart expand even wider to the whole United States. May everyone in the US, every being, be happy and free from suffering, sending that wish out. and expanding to the whole world. May every being we share the earth with tonight, may every being we share the earth with be happy and be free from suffering. May every creature in the water and the ground above the ground, may every being know the joy of existing, feel ease and lightness of heart. Opening your heart to all beings, all of us who are profoundly interconnected. Knowing that as you're sending this wish, you're sending it to everyone you know. You're sending it to the Dalai Lama. You're sending it to Bob Thurman. You're sending it to your best friends. And you're sending it to all the people you will meet in the future and adore. You're sending it to them too. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings know peace and joy. And invite your heart to expand to the earth itself, the earth that's under so much stress. May this earth be well. May this earth, this land, these rivers be healthy. May the earth herself flourish and be safe and protected. Allowing these wishes to fill your heart. And know that as you are practicing compassion for countless others in this moment are extending their compassion to you. Resting for a moment in this open-hearted, open-minded compassion and equanimity, knowing that it is this attitude that will lead you to be a force for good in this world. Genuine concern for every being. And let's conclude this meditation by dedicating the positive effort of this practice to the peace and well-being of all beings throughout the world, including yourself. And reconnecting to the space. Opening your ears to sounds in the room. Listening to the sound of the bell. So that was a true compassion practice for absolutely everyone. So you got to hear about compassion and got to feel compassion. And I'll just say a few more words about compassion and why we cultivate it. Maybe not on script anymore, but compassion is really wishing for the long-term well-being of all beings. And it takes this long-term point of view, long-term health, long-term happiness. So compassion isn't just smiling and being sweet to everyone. It can include hard truths. It can include an honest fight. It can include fighting for your happiness and the happiness of others. So compassion isn't all, it's really not superficial. It's what's really good in the long term. And it's empowering, and it brings happiness, and it gives us something to focus our minds on. It gives us something to come back to. I've been searching for answers, I think, my whole life through religion, through literature. And there's so many people out there who try to give us answers. And the only answer I found that rings true for me is in the science of compassion and in Buddhism. It's only two things. There's only two lessons I can apply to any situation where it feels honest and helpful to me. And it's pay full attention. Bring your full attention to the situation as it is, and be kind. Be kinder than you need to. Be kinder, gentler, more affectionate, more caring than you need to. And if there's absolutely nothing you can do to be kind, just don't cause harm. Don't cause harm to your mind with kind of negative thoughts and malicious thoughts, and don't cause harm to others with malicious words. So pay attention and be kind. And I think that if there's one answer to being a force for good, if there's an attitude that can lead to you being a force for good, it's this one. Pay attention to every human being. Let every human being be multidimensional in your eyes, and be as kind as you can possibly be. So I want to end myself also with gratitude for my teachers at Stanford University, Thupten Jinpa, who designed this compassion curriculum together with neuroscientists like Kelly McGonigal, Erica Rosenberg, Philippe Golden. I want to thank Bob Thurman, and I want to truly thank all of you. I want to thank you for caring about compassion enough to come on this evening, for your full attention, for opening your hearts, opening your minds. I want to thank all of those listening from their homes. Thank you, too, for participating. Thank you for expanding the circle of compassion so wide. I think you are the ones who make this a better city. And even from a 30-minute meditation today, you will positively affect the lives of so many others. So keep meditating. I'm very excited for the rest of this series. I'm unfortunately teaching another compassion class uptown on Wednesday, so I won't be here in person, but I will be once my classes are over. If you want more of this kind of material, I'll be starting a class on Sunday, and you can look that up on the Tibet House calendar for more compassion cultivation. And I really salute you for being here and participating in this Force for Good movement. So let's end together with mindful gratitude, closing your eyes, maybe even putting your hands on your heart that's been so open tonight, ending with mindful appreciation. Thank yourself for practicing today, for opening your heart and your mind. Thanking all of those who have practiced compassion over the years, who have kept this knowledge for us, who passed it down to us. Thanking your body for being so good to you and for bringing you here. And being grateful for the practices themselves, for the space you practice in, and for those who practice with you, for those that are here with you today. And we can symbolically bow the head to the heart that has the answers, bowing your intellect to your inner wisdom, bowing your thoughts to your inner joy. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may your hearts be light, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bravo to you. Thank you for listening. I'll be here to answer any questions, whether over email, and my email is up here, or in person. I'll hang out for a bit. I'd love, if you just want to say hi and introduce yourself, I'd love to just shake your hand and say hello. And yeah, thank you again for coming. And oh, actually, if you would like to hear when else I'm teaching, I have an email list. So if you want to give me your email, I'll add you. And I'll email you about once a month or once every 2 months whenever I have a new class coming. So feel free to share your email with me or come on up. And I'll probably see you at other Force for Good classes as soon as I can attend in person. Hi.
So I took Joe Loizo compassionate class, Sustainable for Happiness.
Oh, good.
The 4-year program.
Great, yeah.
We are going on to